SaaS Backwards is sponsored by Austin Lawrence Group, specializing in demand gen for SaaS. It sure is noisy. I deleted 100 emails from vendors just this morning. Your buyer has gotten better at ignoring you, and you're gonna need a big idea if you want to cut through all that clutter. Austin Lawrence is just the right agency to help you find it. So if your campaigns are falling on deaf eyeballs, let's talk. Visit austinlawrence.com today and let's build something bigger.
Welcome to the SaaS Backwards podcast, where we reverse engineer the success of fast-growing SaaS firms and explore strategies CMOs and CEOs are using to drive their businesses forward.
Welcome to SaaS Backwards, a podcast that helps SaaS CEOs and CMOs to accelerate growth and enhance profitability. Our guest today is our very own Jason Myers, Chief Revenue Officer and positioning expert here at the agency. As many of you know, we're a demand generation specialist that works with software as a services firms. So if you're responsible for driving a SaaS business in the right direction, this episode is definitely for you. Today, we're going to talk about the dangerous 8 messaging and positioning mistakes we see SaaS companies making, and their evidence on their websites. And many of these mistakes flow from there to other outbound motions, sales presentations, and proposals. Hey, Jason, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks. Great to be here.
Yeah, this is going to be a fun one. It's always great when we get to turn the mic and camera on ourselves and talk about the work we're doing and the things we see out in the market. And I think this is going to be a lot of fun on this episode. But before we dig in, tell me what motivated you to want to make this particular podcast episode.
So I see a lot of websites in my prospecting and outreach work. And so I'm constantly evaluating websites based on 2 methodologies really about what the buyer wants to see on websites and how vendors are kind of slow to adopt to it. So that comes out of first of all, the Trust Radius report that they put out every year, which I think is really important for B2B marketers to read up on, because they're showing, the disconnect between, what a buyer wants to see and really, what vendors are providing them, which is not anywhere near, in most cases, what buyers want. And I think if you just put yourself in the shoes of the buyer, like your buyers of other things, like what do you want to see on websites, and it becomes pretty apparent that you're deficient in a lot of areas on your website. The second methodology that I really get behind is from the book, The Challenger Customer. And it's an important methodology because it talks about what you need to do for content to help drive someone off of their status quo. More deals are lost to doing nothing than really to competitors or anything else. And companies are pretty deficient when it comes to providing messaging and carrying a narrative through the content that motivates somebody to take action. And so that kind of gets into some of the mistakes that you'll hear behind that. But what I like to look at the sites from the angle of, are they using a narrative of getting agreement on the problem worth solving, and then pointing out deficiencies in what companies try to do to solve that problem today. So companies try to solve it by doing X, Y, Z, doesn't work very well. And then are they providing an adequate reframe or differentiation? So that's why we're solving this problem this way, because it's proven to be much more effective.
Yeah, I think those 2 things are pretty much seminal works that if you're not taking in the content from Trust Radius, and if you haven't had the opportunity to read The Challenger Customer by Matthew Dixon and Brent Adamson, 2 great resources. The Trust Radius guys offer that up for free, as well as they also give some actionable insights. Like after they put that initial research out, they usually follow it up with some how-tos, which is really great stuff. So let's dig into the dangerous 8. What's the first one on the hit parade, Jason?
And I'll say these are in no particular order, and they are all taken from actual examples. And so I'm going to name some names here, but we'll see how that goes.
Well,
So,
we're naming the names not because we don't love these people, but just because they exemplify some of the things that all of us could probably do a little better.
correct. Yes. And just realize, 80% plus of the sites that I see are making one or more of these mistakes. So you're not alone. It's really hard to find examples that are 100% perfect.
I just want to also say that in terms of expertise, we probably do about 20 deep dives on websites a month like this. So we're probably up to a few hundred that we've really tried to pull apart and understand how they might work better. So this comes from some depth of experience, and hopefully you guys find some value. So let's dig right in.
Yep. Number one is too many vague statements. And those vague statements are making the buyer dig too hard to figure out what you do. So, first of all, the caveat is when a buyer comes to your website, they are looking to solve a problem, right? They have questions in their mind. And if we're not immediately answering those questions, some are going to bounce. It's too much work. So, you don't want to create work to figure out what you do. So, here's a couple of examples that I think are missing the mark. Bot Analytics says, take your conversational AI to the next level. Simple and powerful conversational analytics that allow you to take action and drive continuous improvement. Doesn't really say much what they do or what problem they're solving. Another one, Nectar AI, says zero adoption, contact, and activity capture. Pretty vague statement. And I don't get too much more clarity in the next sentence. They have build trust in your CRM with contact and buyer engagement data across the customer lifecycle. Any comments on those?
Well, I mean, the phrase word salad comes to mind. I mean, the problem as marketers is there's a lot of pressure on us to use the words that others think matter, whether that's sales leadership, founder, board. We have to really defend our role as representing the potential buyer and their needs in a situation. And when you see this kind of word salad on the homepage hero of somebody's website, you know that they're bowing to the pressure from outside of marketing, or they may not have a really good handle on what the customers are actually trying to do. So we've built a product, but we're not sure why. So those are the two kind of scenarios we see.
Absolutely. One other example of that, Oro Inc. says the comprehensive solution for marketplaces of any complexity. And the reason I bring that up is that's a really vague statement. And I think the sales adage here applies that if you're selling to everyone, you're selling to no one. So, vague statements like this cause some cognitive dissonance with the buyer, and some people are just not going to do the work to figure it out and they're going to bounce.
Yeah, I think it's important to point out that let's say 40 to 60% of your traffic begins and ends on the homepage. People think they have some kind of interest in your company. Somebody told them they should take a look, or they found you on search somehow. And if we don't capture them right away, yes, I have that problem, or I might have that problem early on in their journey with us. Same thing holding true on a landing page. If you pay to drive somebody to a landing page, you better get them to understanding you can help them right away. And these statements don't do that. So let's leave that for now. Let's go on to number 2. What else we got in our dangerous 8 mistakes?
Number 2 is the message is somewhat descriptive, but just not very impactful. So 2 good examples of this, Kiona Health, healthcare CRM, followed by harmonize your patient access and be the provider patients want and need. So I get that it's a healthcare CRM, but you really got to dig in there to find out that they're a scheduling product, not necessarily like a strict CRM as I would think about in terms of like a HubSpot or something else. Second example is Syndicate. They say the product content management platform with specialist support for high variant SKUs.
We're back at the salad bar, man. I have no idea what that means.
Right. Well, they're also making another mistake that we'll get to. But yes, so they're trying to be descriptive, like product content management platform. It's just not very impactful, right? Like, again, we're not getting agreement on a problem that we're solving.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of feel like it's important in today's world to stop people. We need to find language that causes people to go, huh, and pause and actually think. People's attention spans are so short that if we don't get them right away into a thought process, we're gonna lose them. And I think these two examples have no impact, really soft selling what they do by just being vague. Being vague is like wearing that gray flannel suit into a new business meeting. Probably not the best idea.
All right, let's move on to number 3. They're leading with AI or other technologies. So now a lot of them make this mistake. I just happened to run across Ubik, who says the AI powered frontline employee experience platform. So not only are they leading with AI, they're a little bit vague in their description. But the big problem with leading with AI is that it has to do with a well-known advertising concept called market sophistication. And so, in short, that means that if you're first to market, then you can use it as an advantage to your headline. But I think we would all agree that AI is so ubiquitous today, you are not first to market. And so it is not an advantage. So somebody is going to wash right over that. Now, I'm not saying don't use AI in your narrative, but it must come later in like the form of a reframe. So in other words, we get agreement on the problem. We point out deficiencies in the current solutions or processes, and then we introduce that's why we use AI, and here's how we're doing it differently, and why we've proven it to be superior to anything on the market.
Yeah, and I think it also depends on your audience, right? So if you're going out and trying to raise some money and the category you're serving doesn't have a lot of AI-based solutions, investors want to know that you're using AI. But I think the people who are going to buy your stuff want to know that it solves the problem. And oh, hey, it's almost like a question in prospects' minds now. Where does AI fit in your solution? As opposed to a year and a half ago where AI first was really very potent. And this is going to happen again. We see this kind of technology first marketing over and over and over. So the first client server XYZ of about 20 years ago, or the cloud native accounting system. Well, everybody's on the cloud. Soon enough, everybody's going to have AI. So look for the next thing because the AI wave has already washed over us.
That's
What's
right.
number 4 on Dangerous 8?
Too much marketing speak, industry jargon, or acronyms.
You can't have too much marketing speak. Come on, that's the business we're in.
The
I
problem
love
is, of
marketing
course,
speak.
yeah, we all love marketing speak. It's words like streamlined and automated. We think that means something, but it doesn't. It's too vague. Like, what does streamline mean if you've ever thought about it, right? The best example of what we're talking about is Mint Mesh. They have a digital solution for EPCs, bid evaluation process, and knowledge management. The only meaningful words in that statement are bid evaluation process, and even that's a little bit vague. But digital solution means nothing. We're assuming that everybody knows what an EPC is. And we're also assuming that they're going to know what the problem is with the current bid evaluation process. As far as knowledge management, that means nothing. So this whole statement I give it a D minus.
You had a couple others here. You want to give those up?
Sure. So I said from FundMiner, they have streamlined and automated fundraising fund management. So first of all, I don't like fundraising fund right next to each other. I get what it's for, but streamlined and automated means absolutely nothing. It's too vague. Those words, we should just eliminate them. Like, tell us what you do. Just be straight about it. Like, what's your differentiation? How are you more powerful? And if you think about it from the buyer's aspect, right? Like, are they losing sleep at night because they need to streamline and automate their processes, or is it something else?
Yeah, it's really interesting. So I probably do 30 or 40 prospect interviews, client interviews a month on behalf of our clients, for messaging and go-to-market strategy work. Not one of them has ever said anything like this is a problem in their business. They almost always cite external factors to their job function that fall into how they have to perform better. So I just think that if you're not aware enough of the pressures that your economic buyers, your functional and economic buyers really face, you're going to fall back on this inward looking stuff of how we make something a little bit faster, a little bit cheaper, a little bit easier. And you're not going to be addressing the actual problems that they seek to solve and the pressures that are on them. So this is a good symptom of not knowing your prospect pain points well enough, I think.
So the next one is one of my favorites.
So this is number
Little,
5 of the dangerous 8, if
that's
you're
right.
keeping track.
Number 5 is little or no problem agreement. And I think the reason is that most marketers don't understand that that's important, that we get problem agreement. I would think more sellers would understand that that's an issue, but it's important for marketers to understand it. And I point back to the previous podcast that we did with Challenger customer author Brent Adamson, where we talk about this is really one of the main problems, that we're not getting agreement on a problem worth solving. So there's all kinds of examples around this. I rarely see some that do it well. I just pulled out a couple though that are starting to hint at it, but they're not pulling it through. So cart.com says better fulfillment starts with better software. And the reason I pull this out, so I don't hate this one, but better fulfillment is starting to talk about a problem, but it's not specific enough. So what is it about your customers in their fulfillment process that is such a struggle that they would need to start looking for software? Would be a better answer to that, or get better problem agreement. Tray.io says accelerate integrations your way. And so the question there is, when they talk to their clients about why they bought from them, was it because that they needed to do integrations faster? And were they frustrated because they weren't customizable enough? So if the answers were yes, then I guess they could carry on. I'm just thinking that probably isn't the most pressing problem that their clients have.
Yeah, so integrations is a really interesting category, especially if you're a SaaS yourself. Having more things that are connected to your software accelerates your own go-to-market. So not exactly sure what these folks do, but if they're helping other software companies to build an integration library, they would be suffering revenue loss because they don't have integrations. Or if you're an end user organization, perhaps it's taking too long to put new capabilities into your own tech stack. So that's, I think, the benefit or problem, right? The problem statement is I can't get new software integrated into my tech stack if I'm an end user, or if I'm another SaaS that they're selling to, but I'm losing revenue ops because I don't have a large enough integration library. And I think that's the thinking we want clients to be doing, right? Is to get to the actual economic business problem, not the outcome, right? So this is a good example of outcome messaging, accelerating integrations. That's an outcome of the software, not necessarily a business outcome.
Yeah, I think it's important for marketers to understand that the best thing that we could possibly do in the messaging on our homepage is to identify a problem, so that when a potential prospect comes to the site and they can immediately identify with that problem, we have gained enough attention that they're going to dig further if they agree that that is a problem worth solving.
Absolutely. And, I think there could be some criticism of this episode coming at us, and I want to head it off at the pass. So we've talked about each of these, I guess, 5 of the dangerous 8 so far in the context of somebody is problem aware. So if we're real demand generation purists, there is a level above prospects who are problem aware. Those are people that don't even have problem awareness. And what we're kind of saying here is that by the time somebody lands on this website, they at least have an inkling of the problem, right? There may not be complete problem agreement, but they have some sense that there's a problem, and they may have an idea that it could be one of a handful of things, or they're trying to figure out what the problem is. The blissfully ignorant, well, we can't really serve them through the dangerous eight, I don't think. But anyway, I just thought I'd put that in there because I know if people have gotten this far into the episode, they're going to be thinking, what about people that aren't problem aware? And I think that there is a role for marketing, obviously, and demand generation to create problem awareness. And that's probably not going to happen on the homepage itself. That's going to be a thought leadership exercise and an outbound motion to get people to understand they might have a problem. Let's move on to number 6, the dangerous eight.
All right. I like this one too. This is a fun one. They make too many unsubstantiated claims. So, fund miner, we are the most effective solution in the space. Clarup says they are the most powerful enterprise privacy governance platform. I can go on and on. We are the most fill in the blank. See it all the time, and it's going to wash right over your customer's head. They're so used to seeing this kind of language that it means nothing unless it is substantiated and immediately backed up by something. So if Gartner says that you're number one in the category, okay, put it there, but it may not be the thing that you lead with either.
Yeah, and this is dangerous kind of language because it kind of eats away at your credibility. And we see companies not only use this in their messaging that's apparent on the website, but a lot of times in places where it's even more subtle, but also very dangerous in their press releases, as an example. Journalists are trained to filter out companies that make unsubstantiated claims. And I think savvy buyers are now becoming a little more skeptical of claims by vendors, and they want to see the proof. In fact, you might say almost all of us are from Missouri. Want to be shown before they're told. So I think you need to be able to prove the claims you make, and those claims have to be relevant to the buyer. If they're not relevant to the buyer, they're just not going to be worth making. And in fact, you're probably damaging the beginning of a relationship.
Well, and back to the Trust Radius report, this year, the title is Prove It or Lose It. So if you're not immediately proving your claims, you are potentially going to lose them in terms of bouncing or not making the short list or whatever.
Nothing good comes from this.
Nothing good. That's right.
So let's go on to number 7. What do we got?
Number 7 is it comes across, and I see this all the time, it comes across as a nice to have, but not a must have. So language that Plitix uses, for example, your central source of truth for all your product information. Sounds like maybe that's something I want. I don't know. It certainly doesn't say I have to have that. Another one, Gamify, says experience a better way to manage grants. Okay.
Yeah, so these are like examples of like what it does, but not why it matters, right?
Right.
I mean, leading with the what, is just not a good thing. I mean, you can go all the way back to Simon Sinek, right? Start with why. You have to have why. And the what is kind of the last bit of business, what or how. Those things kind of come after. So I love this, your central source of truth. I mean, there's got to be a bigger problem behind that, like product catalogs out of control, always finding your product information out of sync with major distributors, whatever the use case is here. There's lots of opportunity to get people saying, yeah, you got me.
Right. And they may well have bought this product, or the clients may have bought the product because it was a central source of truth. But if you're leading with that for new prospects and you're not giving them context about the problems that we're solving in the first place, then it doesn't make any sense.
So I want to step back just a moment here from these sort of 8 dangerous things we see. And I want to address another area of skepticism we might be getting from people that have listened so far, which is, hey, I've already got 8 or 10 million in revenue. What the heck? I'm doing just fine without these suggestions. And the only thing I can say is, how much better might you be doing if your marketing and sales motions were more effective? And I think that's worth testing. So if you've gotten this far and you're scratching your head, maybe giving us a little virtual side eye, I'd love you to think about, where are the opportunities to test more effective messaging if you see yourself making any of these dangerous eight.
Well, and let's make that even a little stronger for them, right? Like why this is a must do instead of a nice to do is that if you are losing people for any reason that are qualified, you are missing opportunities on your website. And you want to make sure that you maximize the homepage, especially to attract all qualified prospects to ensure that they're going to dig deeper into your content and hopefully hit that get a demo button or talk to sales.
So the gauntlet being thrown down here is the dreaded pain of lost opportunity.
That's right. It's the prospect theory that was written in the 80s, I think, that says basically people are way more concerned about losing than they are about potential gain.
Fair enough. All right, so let's drop to the last of the dangerous eight and lay it on us.
So this one, I don't have any examples for because they are visual, but you've seen it, I'm sure, in the sites that you visit. They are wasting too much space in the hero with things like screenshots or illustrations or pictures that really aren't adding value to the narrative.
Yeah. To me, this is one of the real bummers in a lot of marketing is, somebody invests a whole bunch of money in custom illustrations that seek to communicate something, and they're so small and detailed that, the short-term website visitor can't pull any information out of it anyway, or it's abstract and does nothing. But what can we do? Like, what's an ideal homepage hero going to look like? Like, what would we recommend somebody do? And I think this is probably a quick answer, and you'll know if you're doing something good.
Yeah, my favorite thing to do there is put a video there that I can watch on demand without having to talk to a salesperson. So that could be an explainer video. It could be a testimonial video. It could be your executives explaining and talking through the narrative that we talked about, problem, agreement, deficiencies, and the reframe.
Right. So there's
That's a
probably
great
three elements there, right? There's three elements on this section. There's going to be a solid headline that gets people to stop and say, I might have this problem, or yes, I do. Little subhead to reinforce it, give it a little more description. Maybe a link to see a library of videos that may or may not be gated. And then that compelling, decent production value video at the right to get people engaged right away.
Another real quick mistake that I see a lot is that sometimes they will have a good narrative in the video, an explainer video, and put that in the hero, which is great, but they're not communicating that in the main messaging. So you're assuming that everybody's going to watch that video. And I don't think that's a very good assumption.
Fair enough. So we've given up the dangerous eight, and we have an offer we make pretty liberally, right? To have us train our own expertise on your web property for marketing and messaging assessment. Jason, how can people reach out to you if they want to have you spend a solid hour with them on a detailed set of recommendations on improving the effectiveness of their web-based communication?
Yeah, the easiest way to do that would be to email me at jm, M for Myers, at austinlawrence.com.
Great. And, in the show notes and the promotion of this, we'll put a link to our landing page, which makes this offer of the free assessment. But Jason, this was a lot of fun. The dangerous 8 mistakes you must be making or might be making on your web property. Thanks so much for sharing that with us.
Absolutely.
And if you haven't subscribed to the podcast, please do so wherever podcasts are distributed. SaaS Backwards is a production of Austin Lawrence Group, a demand generation agency that specializes in software as a service. If you want to learn more about us, it's at austinlawrence.com, AustinLawrence.com. And Jason, thanks again for a great episode.
You're welcome. Enjoyed it.
Thanks for listening to the SaaS Backwards Podcast, brought to you by Austin Lawrence Group. We're a growth marketing agency that helps SaaS firms reduce churn, accelerate sales, and generate demand. Learn more about us at www.austinlawrence.com. You can email Ken Lempet at kl@austinlawrence.com about any SaaS marketing or customer retention subject. We hope you'll subscribe, and thanks again for listening.